I still remember that day, how the sunlight fell on the car seat like it was mocking me. I had gone to his car that morning to grab my water bottle before work. Everything seemed normal, the usual clutter of receipts, grocery bags, and his jacket draped over the passenger seat. But then I noticed something unusual tucked between the seat cushions. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. My heart started pounding and my palms felt sweaty. I reached down, my fingers trembling slightly, and pulled out a small box. 5 condoms. 5 wrapped neatly and lying there as if someone had planned for me to find them. Shock hit me first. My mind raced. I had always trusted him. We laughed together, shared secrets, built a life together, or so I thought. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel tightly, trying to make sense of it. Maybe they were old. Maybe there was a simple explanation. But then a whisper of doubt crept in, cold and sharp. Why didn't he tell me? Why hide this? The quiet hum of the neighborhood around me felt louder suddenly. Birds chirped. A dog barked somewhere down the street, but I could barely hear it over the thundering in my chest. I could feel the heat rising to my face, a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal. I thought about confronting him immediately, but something told me I couldn't just explode without a plan. My emotions were a storm, and I had to control it. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel as if it were a lifeline. The familiar streets felt different. Every corner, every neighbor's house seemed to mock me. At home, I kept the box hidden in my purse and went about my day as if nothing had happened. But inside, a fire was growing. A fire that whispered revenge. I needed him to feel what I was feeling. I wanted him to regret betraying my trust that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, the box on my dresser, taunting me. I thought about all the times I had trusted him blindly, the laughter we shared, the promises made, and now this. I could feel my hands clench, my teeth grinding in frustration. I started imagining ways to teach him a lesson, ways that would shock him, make him realize how deeply he had hurt me. The next day, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let him off easy. I wanted him to see that actions have consequences. I remembered a story I'd once heard online about someone who took matters into their own hands in a clever, spicy way. And that thought planted a dangerous seed in my mind. I knew I had to act carefully, make sure my plan was perfect. Over the next few hours, I observed him without letting him notice. Every text, every call, every glance became a piece of the puzzle. I had to understand his patterns before I could make my move. The house felt tense, the air thick with unspoken words. I kept thinking about that box in my purse. 5 little items that had the power to change everything by evening. I was ready to start my plan. But just as I was about to take the first step, I heard a sound behind me. The creak of the floorboard, a soft footstep. He was home earlier than I expected. My heart jumped. I froze, caught in the moment. I could hear him humming softly as he walked into the living room. He had no idea that I knew his secret. He had no idea that the fire of revenge was already burning in me. And then, just as I was about to retreat to hide my plan, my eyes caught something even stranger. There, lying on the coffee table, was a note in his handwriting. My pulse quickened. It wasn't meant for me. Or maybe it was. My hands shook as I reached for it, my mind racing with fear and curiosity. The note said only one line. I never thought you'd find out so soon. I froze, my heart thundering, a cold sweat covering my skin. How did he know? Did he suspect something? Was this a trap? I didn't know whether to feel fear or excitement. One thing was clear: I was now in the middle of a game I didn't fully understand. And the stakes were higher than I had imagined. As the evening shadows grew long across the room, I realized that what started as a simple discovery had turned into something much bigger. I couldn't just ignore it. I couldn't just react blindly. I had to plan, to wait, and to strike at the perfect moment. The thought both terrified and thrilled me. And at that moment, I knew my life was about to change forever. But just as I was about to set my plan in motion, the phone rang. The caller ID flashed his name. My hand hovered over the phone, unsure whether to answer. The sound of his voice on the other end could shatter my resolve, make my plan even sweeter. And that's when I realized He was waiting for me to make a move. I still remember that night, the way my hands trembled when the phone rang, the sound echoing through the quiet room like a warning bell. The house was dim, the only light coming from the small lamp on the corner table. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like the sound would give me away. I stared at the phone screen, his name glowing there, bright and calm as if nothing had changed. I didn't know whether to answer or let it ring out. My fingers hovered over the screen, my thoughts spinning. He was calling me like any other night, but I was no longer the same woman. Something inside me had cracked open, and I could feel the sharp edges of betrayal cutting through my chest. Finally, I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello?" My voice came out softer than I expected, almost steady, even though my pulse was racing. On the other end, his voice sounded relaxed. "Hey, honey," he said, casual, warm, the same tone that once made me feel safe. "Just wanted to tell you I'll be late tonight. There's some extra work at the office." My grip tightened around the phone. "Oh," I said quietly. "Late again?" "Yeah," he replied, his voice fading slightly, maybe because he was moving or maybe because he didn't want to talk long. "Don't wait up for me. I'll grab something to eat on the way." A bitter laugh almost escaped my throat, but I swallowed it down. Don't wait up for me. I knew what that meant now, or at least I thought I did. My mind went back to that box hidden in my drawer, the 5 condoms that had turned my world upside down. "Okay," I said finally. "Drive safe." My tone was calm, maybe too calm. He paused for a second, maybe surprised by how normal I sounded. "I will. Love you." "Love you too," I whispered, but the words tasted strange. When I hung up, I just sat there in the quiet, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the soft rustle of curtains moving with the night air. Everything felt too peaceful, too ordinary. I knew something ugly was hiding beneath it all. That was when my plan started to take shape. I opened the drawer and looked at the box again. 5 little reminders of betrayal. I picked one up and turned it in my hand, feeling the thin plastic under my fingers. My anger had settled into something cold, now focused, patient, and dangerous. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for an explanation. I was going to make him remember this for the rest of his life. The next morning, I acted as if nothing had happened. I made breakfast, smiled when he came down the stairs, kissed him on the cheek before he left for work. Inside, I felt nothing but a hollow ache and a quiet fire. I watched him get into his car and drive away, the same car where I had found those things, the same car where the truth had hidden in plain sight. Once he was gone, I opened the kitchen cabinet, reached for the small glass jar on the top shelf, one that held crushed red chili powder. My grandmother used to warn me to be careful with it because it burned like fire if it touched your skin. But that was exactly what I needed. Something that would burn. Something that would leave a mark, not on his body, but on his pride. I sat at the table and carefully opened the first packet, my heart beating fast. The faint smell of rubber mixed with the sharp spice of chili in the air. My hands moved slowly, almost shaking as I sprinkled the powder inside, sealing them back just the way they were. I did it for all 5. When I was done, I looked at them, lined neatly on the table like silent witnesses of my pain. It wasn't about hurting him physically. It was about showing him that I wasn't weak, that I had seen everything. And I would not be the fool in this story. The smell lingered in the air, hot and bitter as I put the box back in his car exactly where I had found it. Every movement felt heavy, like my heart was pushing against my ribs. I kept imagining his face when he discovered what I'd done. Would he be scared? Ashamed? Angry? I didn't know. But I wanted to see it. I wanted to see that moment when he realized I knew everything. That night, he came home late again. The smell of his cologne filled the air when he walked in. I watched him quietly from the couch, pretending to read a book. He didn't notice anything. He just said he was tired, kissed my forehead, and went straight to the shower. I stared at his back as he walked away, wondering what kind of lies he told himself to sleep at night. Later, when he was asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again, my mind replaying every detail. The way he smiled, the way he looked at his phone when he thought I wasn't watching, the late-night calls. the sudden change in his tone. I could almost hear his heartbeat beside me, calm and steady. Unaware that his secret had already been touched by fire. Days passed, and I waited. I wanted to see a sign, some reaction, some hint that my plan had reached him. But he acted the same, smiling, laughing, pretending to love me like nothing had changed. It made me question everything. Did he even use them? Was there another woman? Or was he hiding something completely different? My mind was full of questions, and every question made the silence louder. Then, one afternoon when I was cleaning the living room, I noticed something that made my breath stop. A faint smell, familiar and sharp, coming from his jacket pocket. I reached inside and pulled out a single condom, one of the 5. My heart froze. It was open. I felt the world tilt for a moment, my throat dry. The chilly powder smell was faint, but there. He must have noticed. But why hadn't he said anything? Why didn't he confront me? Was he pretending not to know what I did? Or worse, was he hiding something darker? That night, he was quiet. Too quiet. He didn't touch his food, barely looked at me, and went to bed early. I watched him from the doorway, the dim light falling across his face. He looked peaceful, but I could see something in his eyes, something guarded, calculating. And then, just as I turned to leave the room, he spoke without opening his eyes. His voice was low, calm, but it cut through the silence like a knife. "So, you've been in my car, haven't you?" My blood ran cold. I still remember that night as if it happened an hour ago, the room heavy with silence. The air too still, my breath caught in my throat. His voice echoed in my ears, low and calm, almost casual, but I could feel the danger behind it. "So, you've been in my car, haven't you?" he said again, still not opening his eyes. My heart stopped for a second. Every thought, every plan, every drop of anger I had felt earlier seemed to freeze inside me. I stood there by the door, my fingers tightening around the edge of the frame. He wasn't supposed to know. He wasn't supposed to find out this soon. I tried to stay calm. "What are you talking about?" I asked softly, my voice almost trembling. He opened his eyes then. There was no anger in them, no surprise either. Just something cold, sharp, and unreadable. "You know exactly what I mean," he said, sitting up slowly. The dim light from the lamp cast shadows across his face, making his expression even harder to read. "You were in my car. You found them, didn't you?" I didn't answer. My throat felt dry, my hands cold. He sighed and rubbed his face with both hands, letting out a quiet laugh, one that didn't sound like him. "You could have just asked," he said quietly. "Asked what?" I snapped before I could stop myself. "Why there were 5 condoms in your car? Why, you've been coming home late? Why, you've been lying to me?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. The silence broke between us, and everything I had been holding back came spilling out. He looked at me then, his jaw tight. "You think I'm cheating on you?" he said, his tone colder now. "That's what you believe? What else should I think?" I shot back. "What kind of man keeps that in his car and lies about where he goes every night?" For a long moment, he said nothing. He just stared at me, his eyes flicking to my hands, to my face, like he was trying to read every thought running through my head. Then, slowly, a strange smile curved on his lips. "You shouldn't have done what you did," he said softly. A chill ran down my spine. "What do you mean?" "I know what you did to them," he said. "You thought I wouldn't notice?" My breath caught. My mind started racing. How did he find out? Did he smell the chili? Did someone tell him? My knees felt weak, and I gripped the door tighter. "You're imagining things," I tried to say, but my voice barely came out. He stood up then, walked toward me slowly. His movements were calm, but every step he took made my heart beat faster. "No," he said quietly. "I'm not imagining anything. You went into my car. You opened them. You thought you could teach me a lesson." He paused, looking down at me. "Do you know how dangerous that was?" I blinked, confused. "Dangerous? For who?" He smiled again, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "For you." The words hit me like a slap. For me? What was he saying? My stomach tightened. I took a step back. "You're scaring me," I said. He sighed, his voice dropping lower. "You don't know what you've done?" He turned away from me, ran a hand through his hair, and muttered something under his breath that I couldn't hear. For a few seconds, he just stood there, breathing heavily before saying, "Go to sleep. We'll talk in the morning." I couldn't sleep. I lay awake all night, staring at the ceiling, listening to his breathing beside me. My mind kept replaying his words. "You don't know what you've done." What did he mean? Was he just angry? Or was there something more? The next morning, he was gone before I woke up. His side of the bed was cold. I went to the kitchen expecting a note, but there was nothing. No text, no message. Just silence. I tried to calm myself, telling my heart that maybe he just needed space. But then I saw if the car wasn't in the driveway. Hours passed. I tried calling him, but he didn't answer. I called his office, but they said he hadn't shown up that day. My heart started pounding. Maybe he was avoiding me. Maybe he was furious. But then another thought crept into my mind, one that made me feel cold all over. What if something happened to him? Evening came, and still nothing. I was pacing by the window when I heard the faint sound of tires on the driveway. I rushed to the window and saw his car pull in. My relief lasted only a second, because when he stepped out, he wasn't alone. A woman got out of the passenger side. She was tall, her hair pulled back neatly, wearing a black jacket. She wasn't smiling. She walked beside him like she belonged there. My chest tightened, my breath short. He opened the door for her, said something quietly. And they both walked inside. I backed away from the window, my hands shaking. My heart felt like it would burst from my chest. He brought her here. To our house. The door opened. Their footsteps echoed down the hall. I tried to keep calm, tried to act like I didn't know what was going on. He walked into the living room, the woman behind him. "This is her," he said flatly, his eyes on me. She looked at me, her gaze sharp and cold. "Mrs. Taylor," she said, her voice professional, almost emotionless. "I'm Detective Miller. I think we need to talk, Detective." My mind went blank. My heart pounded so hard I thought I would faint. "Detective," I whispered, "what is this about?" She exchanged a look with my husband before answering. "It's about what you put inside those condoms." The room went silent. I could hear only the faint ticking of the clock and my own heartbeat in my ears. I tried to speak, but no words came out. I could see my husband standing behind her, his expression hard, unrecognizable. "What do you mean?" I finally managed to whisper. She took a step closer. "You've done something very serious," she said quietly, "and you might not even realize how much trouble you're in." My breath caught in my throat. I could barely move. The room started to spin around me. And I could feel the weight of what she said pressing down like a storm. And that was the moment I realized this was no longer just about revenge. Something much darker had started. I still remember that night, the smell of his cologne mixing with the sharp scent of fear that filled the air when the detective said those words. My hands went cold, my legs felt weak, and I could barely breathe. The living room suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in. Detective Miller stood straight, her face calm but serious, her eyes studying me like she already knew everything I was going to say. My husband sat on the edge of the sofa, his hands clasped together, silent. "What do you mean?" I whispered again, though my throat was so dry it hurt to speak. "I didn't do anything wrong." The detective sighed softly, her tone steady but heavy. "Mrs. Taylor, earlier this morning, your husband brought us something from his car. It was a box of condoms. You tampered with them, didn't you?" My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I didn't hurt anyone," I said, shaking my head. My words trailed off. The memory of the chili powder, the anger, the betrayal lit all came flooding back. "I just wanted to teach him a lesson." Detective Miller's eyes didn't soften. "Do you know what could have happened if someone else had used those? If someone had come into contact with that powder?" I blinked, confused. "It was just chili. It's not like poison or anything." She took a deep breath and said slowly, "Mrs. Taylor, What you used wasn't ordinary chili. It was industrial-grade chili extract, the kind that's used in pepper sprays and riot control. It can cause burns, severe pain, even hospitalization. The words hit me like a punch. "That's not possible," I whispered, my voice trembling. "It was just chili powder from my kitchen." She opened a small folder she had brought and took out a photo. My hands trembled as I took it. It showed a sealed evidence bag, and inside it, one of the condoms I had filled. Red residue coated the inside. The caption at the bottom read, "Capsaicin level extremely high." I stared at it, my mind spinning. I couldn't understand how that was possible. "I swear I didn't know," I said softly. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted him to feel what?" She cut in. "Pain, fear, shame." Her words pierced through me like a blade. My husband was still silent. He didn't even look at me. He just stared at the floor, his jaw tight, his face unreadable. I turned to him, desperate. "Say something," I whispered. "Please. Tell her I didn't mean any harm." But he didn't speak. Not a single word. The detective glanced between us. "We're not pressing charges yet," she said finally, "but we need to take your statement. You'll have to come with me to the station tomorrow morning." I nodded weakly, unable to process it all. She gave me a final look, one that was more human than professional. "Mrs. Taylor," she said quietly, "sometimes revenge burns everyone it touches." Then she turned and left. The sound of the door closing behind her echoed through the house. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The silence was so thick it felt alive. Finally, I whispered, "Why did you call the police?" He looked up slowly, his eyes dark and tired. "Because I didn't know what else to do," he said. "You scared me? Scared you?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "I was the one who found those in your car. You were lying to me, sneaking around. What was I supposed to think?" His jaw clenched. "You could have asked," he said coldly. "You could have trusted me, trusted you." I laughed bitterly, tears burning my eyes. "How could I trust you when you had 5 condoms hidden in your car?" He stood up suddenly, his voice sharp. "They weren't for cheating. Damn it!" I froze. My tears stopped. The words hung in the air, strange and heavy. "Then what?" I whispered. "What were they for?" He took a deep breath, rubbing his temples like he was trying to find the right words. "I wasn't cheating," he said quietly. "I was helping someone." I stared at him, not understanding. Helping someone. What does that even mean? He walked over to the window, his back to me. "A friend at work," he said after a long pause. "His younger brother, he's been into dangerous stuff. Drugs, unsafe situations. I've been trying to help him get clean, keep him safe. The condoms were for him." My head was spinning. It sounded ridiculous. "You expect me to believe that?" He turned around, his eyes meeting mine. "It's the truth," he said. He didn't want to buy them himself. He was embarrassed. I was trying to protect him, help him stay safe. "I didn't tell you because I knew you'd misunderstand." The room went silent again. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. Could it be true? Could all my anger, all my pain, have been built on a misunderstanding? But then I remembered the note. The one I had found on the coffee table that said, "I never thought you'd find out so soon." I looked at him, my voice shaking. "Then what about that note?" His brow furrowed. "What note?" "The one on the table." "In your handwriting?" He looked genuinely confused. "I didn't write any note." My stomach twisted. "Don't lie to me," I said. "I saw it with my own eyes." He shook his head slowly. "I swear I didn't write anything like that." For a moment, we just stared at each other. His face was pale, mine probably the same. The silence stretched between us like a shadow. And then, just as I was about to say something, the sound of my phone broke the silence. It buzzed on the table beside me. I glanced down, frowning. The screen showed a number I didn't recognize. My hands shook as I picked it up. "Hello," I said softly. There was a pause, then a distorted voice on the other end. low, calm, and unfamiliar. "You shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours." The voice said. My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I whispered. The line went dead. I stood there frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, the words echoing in my head. When I looked up, my husband was staring at me, confusion and fear mixing on his face. "What happened?" he asked, his voice low. I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying whatever game I thought I was playing. I wasn't the only one involved. Someone else knew. Someone who wasn't supposed to. And that's when I began to understand. This story was far from over. I still remember that night when the phone slipped from my hand and hit the floor. The echo of that distorted voice kept repeating inside my head like a haunting whisper. "You shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours." The words felt heavy, poisonous, crawling into my thoughts and refusing to leave. I stood there frozen, staring at the silent phone as if it might come alive again. My husband's face was pale. He looked at me with confusion, maybe fear. The lamp's warm light flickered slightly, throwing shadows across the room that moved like ghosts. "Who was that?" he asked again, his voice low, almost cautious. I don't know," I said softly, my voice shaking. It was a strange number. The person knew. I stopped swallowing hard. "They knew what I did." He frowned deeply. "What do you mean, they knew?" I looked at him, my throat tight. "They said you shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours." He ran a hand over his face, muttering something under his breath. "Maybe it's a prank. Someone from work messing around." But I knew that wasn't it. The voice wasn't joking. It wasn't teasing or playful. It was calm, cold, and deliberate. I could still hear it in my ears, that strange, distorted tone. Like someone using a machine to hide who they really were. The rest of that night passed in uneasy silence. We didn't talk much. He went to bed early, but I stayed in the living room staring at my phone, waiting for it to ring again. Every small sound made me jump. The ticking clock, the creak of the wooden floor, even the wind brushing against the window wall of it sounded too loud. Too close. Around midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the window and looked outside. The street was empty, washed in the yellow glow of the streetlights. But then, just as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, I noticed something across the road. Near the corner, a car parked with its lights off. The shape of a person sat inside in SUV. My breath caught. I stood perfectly still, staring, waiting to see if they would move. But they didn't. They just sat there, watching. I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. My fingers trembled as I reached for my phone, ready to call the police. But then the car engine started quietly, and it drove away slowly, almost deliberately. The next morning, I told my husband about it. He frowned, looked out the window, then shook his head. "You're just stressed," he said. "After everything that happened, it's natural to imagine things." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think my mind was playing tricks on me. But something deep inside whispered that I wasn't imagining anything later that day. I got another message. This time it wasn't a call. It was a text. "Unknown number. Do you really know who your husband is?" My blood turned cold. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I read it over and over, my heart racing. I showed it to him. He looked at it, his expression unreadable. "Probably spam," he said too quickly. He deleted it from my phone before I could stop him. "You shouldn't engage with this kind of thing." But the way he avoided my eyes told me something else. He was hiding something again, that evening. I sat outside in the backyard watching the sun dip behind the trees. The air was cool, but I could still smell the faint trace of chili powder on my fingers, no matter how much I washed them. It was like the memory of what I'd done wouldn't wash away. My phone buzzed again. My heart jumped. Another message from the same number. "Unknown. He lied to you." Check the box again. I froze. It's the box. The one I had found in his car. But I had given it to the detective. Or so I thought. Maybe there was another one. I waited until he went to shower, then slipped outside quietly. The car was parked exactly where it always was. The air smelled faintly of oil and wet pavement. I opened the driver's door slowly, my heart pounding, and began to look around. At first, everything looked normal. But then I noticed the small compartment under the seat, the one he rarely used. I reached under and felt something, a small, flat package wrapped in brown paper. My fingers trembled as I pulled it out. There was no label, no writing, just something sealed with black tape. I turned it over in my hands, my stomach twisting with unease. When I finally opened it, my breath caught in my throat. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Some of him, some of me. Some of us together at home, at the grocery store, walking in the park. But most of them were taken from a distance, as if someone had been following us for weeks. My knees went weak. I dropped the photos on the seat, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Someone had been watching us, following us. And whoever it was, they knew everything. Just then, I heard the front door open. His footsteps echoed across the driveway. "What are you doing out here?" he called. I scrambled to close the compartment and hide the photos behind my back. I thought I left my scarf in the car," I said quickly. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes dark and searching. Then he gave a short nod. "Come inside. It's cold." I followed him, clutching the photos in my pocket. My mind raced. Who took them? Was it the person on the phone? Was it the detective? Or was it him? That night, after he fell asleep, I sat on the floor of our room and looked at the pictures again under the faint light of my phone. In one of them, he was standing with another man I didn't recognize. They were outside a warehouse. The photo was grainy, but something about the background caught my eye. There was a sign, half visible, Raven Storage Unit 34. The next morning, I made a decision. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust anyone. I needed to know the truth. When he left for work, I followed him. I stayed several cars behind, my heart thudding as I trailed him across town. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he drove toward the industrial district, to that same warehouse I had seen in the photo. He parked outside, looked around carefully, then went in. I waited in my car for 15 long minutes before stepping out. The building looked abandoned, the windows dusty, the doors rusted. My stomach tightened as I walked closer. I could hear faint voices from inside his voice, and another one, low and rough. I couldn't make out the words, but I caught one phrase clearly. "She doesn't know yet." My heart skipped a beat. He was talking about me. I leaned closer, my hand pressed against the cold metal of the door. The next words came faint but sharp, slicing through the silence. "If she finds out what's really in that box, we're both dead." I gasped quietly, stepping back in shock. What's really in that box? The words echoed in my mind like thunder. My heart pounded in my ears as I stumbled away, my breathing quick and shallow, and then, from inside, I heard footsteps fast, moving toward the door. Someone had heard me. I turned and ran. I still remember that day so clearly. The air was thick with dust and fear. And my heartbeat was the only thing I could hear as I ran from that warehouse. My shoes slapped against the cracked concrete, the sound echoing in the empty streets like a warning. I didn't dare look back. I just kept running until I reached my car, fumbling with the keys, my hands shaking so bad I almost dropped them. When the engine finally started, I drove as fast as I could, not caring where I was going, just away. The sun was dipping behind the buildings, casting long orange shadows that seemed to chase me. I could still hear his voice in my head, clear as day. "If she finds out what's really in that box, we're both dead." That line kept playing again and again, each time colder than before. What did he mean? What could possibly be in that box that was so dangerous? I parked near a small diner far from home. My mouth was dry and I hadn't eaten all day, but I couldn't think of food. I just sat there in silence, staring at the steering wheel, trying to catch my breath. I felt betrayed, confused, and scared all at once. My husband, the man I thought I knew, was meeting strangers in dark warehouses, hiding boxes, and whispering about being killed if I found out the truth. After a while, I forced myself to think. I couldn't just sit there. I needed to go back to that warehouse, but this time, I had to be careful. If I went alone again, I might never come back. I remembered the detective. He had given me his number when we spoke last time. I hesitated, then finally called him. My voice was shaky when I said, "I think my husband is in trouble. Or maybe I am." He met me at a small cafe half an hour later. He was calm, serious, with that same patient look he always had. But when I told him what I saw and heard, his eyes narrowed. "Raven Storage, you said?" He repeated. "That area's been under investigation for months. Illegal trading, maybe worse. You're lucky they didn't see you." My heart dropped. Illegal trading. What kind? He leaned closer, lowering his voice. Black market items. Restricted materials, stolen tech, and sometimes people. I froze. I felt like my blood turned to ice. "People," I whispered. He nodded slowly. "Human trafficking. We've had leads, but never enough evidence. If your husband's involved," I couldn't breathe. My husband, kind, quiet man who always kissed my forehead before bed, was mixed up in something like that. No, it couldn't be true. Maybe he was helping someone. Maybe he didn't know. But deep down, my gut twisted with something heavier, the awful feeling that he knew exactly what he was doing. The detective gave me an address. "I'll get a warrant. But don't go back there until I say so." That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt smaller, darker. Every creak in the hallway made me jump. My husband came home late, saying he had to stay back for a work project. His face looked tired, but his eyes looked alert, searching, as if he was studying me. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. I forced a small smile. "Yeah, just tired." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. He came closer and touched my hand, and for a second, I felt that old warmth again, the safety I used to feel when he was near. But then his phone buzzed, and he pulled away quickly, checking it before locking the screen without showing me. "Work," he said flatly. "Go to bed. I'll be there soon." But I didn't go to bed. I waited until he fell asleep on the couch. Then I quietly took his phone. My hands were trembling as I unlocked it using his fingerprint. My stomach twisted as I scrolled through his messages. Most were normal work updates, few from friends, but then there was a hidden folder labeled R34. My breath caught. I opened it. Inside were dozens of messages from an unknown contact. Unknown. The shipment is delayed. Too much attention near the docks. Unknown. She suspects something. Handle it. Unknown. If she talks, it's over for both of us. I covered my mouth, trying not to make a sound. My whole body was shaking. He had been lying for months. And that voice on the phone, the one that warned MIT, wasn't random. It was connected to him. Maybe it was even someone he worked with. Suddenly, I heard movement. He stirred on the couch. I quickly placed his phone back on the table and pretended to be asleep. I could feel his eyes on me, watching for a moment before he turned off the light. My heart didn't stop pounding until I was sure he was asleep again. The next morning, I got a call from the detective. His voice was tense. "We checked the warehouse," he said. It was empty. Completely cleared out. Whoever was there knew we were coming. I felt a chill run through me. "You mean someone warned them?" "Yes," he said grimly. "And there's more. Your husband's car was seen near the docks last night. He's deeper in this than we thought." I couldn't hold the tears anymore. I sat on the floor, shaking, crying quietly so he wouldn't hear me. Everything I believed about our marriage was falling apart. But even in that pain, one thought burned brighter than the rest. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not anymore. That night, I prepared my own plan. I backed up his messages, saved the photos, and copied everything onto a flash drive. I hid it in a small box behind the kitchen tiles. Then I texted the detective, "If anything happens to me, chuck behind the third tile above the stove." When my husband came home, he looked tense. His eyes were bloodshot, his shirt half untucked. "Rough day?" I asked softly. He just stared at me for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, things are complicated." I can tell, I said, meeting his gaze. You've been distant lately. Secrets, late nights. Are you hiding something from me? He froze. For a moment, I saw something flicker in his eyes, fear, guilt, maybe even regret. But then it was gone. He forced a smile. You're imagining things. I laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. Am I? He looked at me sharply. What are you trying to say? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed again. He looked down and I saw the name flash for just a second known. His face went pale. Who's that? I asked quietly. No one, he said too fast, stuffing the phone into his pocket. But I'd seen enough. I turned away, pretending not to care. My mind was already made up. Tomorrow morning I was going back to the docks with or without the detective. I had to see for myself what my husband was truly doing that night. I packed a small bag with my phone, a flashlight, and the spare car keys. I sat by the window until the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Then I left. The roads were empty, the city still asleep. The docks looked silent and cold under the rising sun. I parked far away and walked the rest of the distance quietly. Seagulls cried in the distance, and the wind carried the salty smell of the sea. Then I saw it. Its car. Parked near a warehouse labeled Dock 12. The same kind of black car that had followed me before. My heart hammered as I crouched behind a container and watched him step out, talking to two men in dark coats. They were holding something, a small crate, metallic. Locked tight. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I caught one sentence before they disappeared inside. Tonight it gets delivered. No mistakes this time. I didn't know what was in that crate, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was something darker, something dangerous. And as I pulled out my phone to record, cold voice whispered behind me, close to my ear, I warned you not to get involved. My blood froze. I turned around slowly and saw the man from the photographs. I still remember that moment, his breath against my neck, the weight of his voice, the coldness of the metal pressing gently against my back. A gun. My heart stopped for a beat. The man from the photos stood only inches away, his face hidden under the shadow of his cap, but I could see his eyes sharp, calculating, emotionless. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. My fingers trembled around my phone, and for a second, I thought about running. But I knew he'd pull the trigger before I could take a step. Put the phone down, he said quietly. His voice wasn't angry, it was calm, almost patient, and that terrified me even more. I slowly lowered the phone and placed it on the ground. He kicked it away and gestured for me to stand. What do you want from me? I whispered, trying to keep my voice steady. He tilted his head slightly, studying me like I was something strange he didn't understand. I told you before, he said softly. You shouldn't have touched what wasn't yours. My chest tightened. Who are you? What's in that box? What is my husband involved in? He didn't answer right away. The waves behind us crashed against the dock, and a seagull's cry echoed through the morning air. Finally, he said, You really don't know, do you? I wouldn't be asking if I did, I snapped. The fear mixing with anger now. He smiled faintly, though there was nothing kind in it. Your husband isn't who you think he is. That box you keep asking about TAZs, not drugs, and it's not weapons. It's something much bigger. Something people would kill for. My throat went dry. Then, what is it? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. Proof. Proof. I echoed, proof of what? He stepped back slightly, eyes darting toward the warehouse where my husband had gone moments earlier. Proof of corruption, names, accounts, everything your husband's company has been hiding for years. He wasn't just helping them, he was protecting himself. He's been their accountant, their cleaner, and their shield. My head spun. That's not possible. He works for a shipping company. He laughed quietly. Shipping, yes. But not just cargo. People, money, secrets, they move it all. Your husband was the one making sure no one ever traced it back to the top. I shook my head, refusing to believe it. No, he can't be part of that. He's not like that. The man's face hardened. Then why do you think he called the cops on you when you tampered with those condoms? He wasn't protecting himself from embarrassment, he was protecting the operation. That car wasn't his. It was theirs. You almost ruined months of careful hiding. I felt dizzy. My chest tightened and the world started to blur. You're lying, I whispered. He looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. I wish I was. Before I could say anything, a door creaked open behind us. My husband stepped out of the warehouse, flanked by the two men in dark coats. His eyes widened when he saw me. Emily, he shouted. What are you doing here? The man behind me shoved me forward, his gun hidden now. Go to him, he murmured. Let's see if he tells you the truth. I stumbled toward my husband, my voice breaking. What is this? What are you doing here? He looked from me to the man behind me, panic flashing across his face. You followed me? You lied to me. I cried. About everything. The boxes, the phone calls, the messages. I saw them all. The two men behind him looked uneasy, glancing toward the stranger in the shadows. My husband stepped forward slowly, raising his hands like he was calming a wild animal. Listen to me, Emily. You don't understand. It's not what it looks like. It's what you always say, I said bitterly. But this time, I'm not walking away until you tell me the truth. He hesitated, his lips trembling. Then, in a voice so low I almost didn't hear, he said, They made me do it. The man behind me chuckled softly. Oh, here we go. My husband's face twisted with guilt. They had something on me. I didn't have a choice, Emily. I tried to get out, but they threatened to kill you. That's why I stayed. I stared at him, my eyes filling with tears. Then what's in the box? He hesitated again, then finally said, Evidence. Everything they've done. I was going to give it to the police. That's why they're after me. I looked at the man behind me. He said the same thing. The stranger smirked. Of course he did. It's a nice story. But he's not giving it to the police. He's selling it to someone even worse. My husband's eyes went cold. Don't listen to him, he said sharply. He's lying. He's one of them. I'm not the one who built their accounts, the stranger replied. The tension was suffocating. The three men near the warehouse shifted, one of them pulling a gun. The stranger reacted first fast, too fast for me to even see clearly. A single shot rang out. One of the men dropped. My husband grabbed my arm, shouting, Run! We bolted toward the car as chaos erupted behind us. Bullets whizzed past, hitting the metal crates and sending sparks flying. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely think. He yanked open the car door, pushed me inside, and jumped in after me. The tires screeched as we sped away, the docks disappearing behind us for miles. Neither of us spoke. The sound of the engine filled the silence, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Finally, I asked, Tell me the truth, David. No more lies. Who is he? What is really happening? He took a deep breath, eyes fixed on the road. He's an enforcer, he said quietly. One of the people I was supposed to keep away from the records. But he went rogue. He wants to expose them all, land me with them. Then why did he say you're selling the proof? He didn't answer. His jaw tightened. David, I pressed. Tell me the truth. He slammed the brakes suddenly. The car screeched to a stop on the empty road. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Then he looked at me, his eyes full of something I couldn't read: fear, maybe regret. I was going to sell it, he admitted. But then I changed my mind. I wanted to get us out, start over. But it's too late now. They won't let us go. My heart sank. You lied to me again? I whispered. He turned to me, tears forming in his eyes. I did it to protect you. Before I could respond, headlights flared behind us, bright, blinding, growing closer. I turned in my seat. Another car was speeding toward us fast. David's face went pale. They found us. He hit the gas and the car roared forward. The chase had begun. I gripped the seatbelt, my breath caught in my throat, watching the lights get closer in the mirror. My husband's phone buzzed, lighting up with a message from unknown. You can't run forever. The car behind us swerved, gaining speed. I felt my stomach twist as the road curved into the forest ahead. The night was coming fast. And I knew this wasn't going to end quietly, and as the first gunshot shattered the rear window, I realized the real story was only just beginning. I still remember that night, the one when everything finally broke apart. The road ahead was a blur of headlights and fear. The car jolted as David pushed it harder, the tires screaming on the wet asphalt. Behind us, the black SUV closed in fast, its engine growling like a predator that had finally found its prey. Every shot that hit the car made me flinch, glass shards flying through the air, stinging my arms. "David, stop. You'll kill us." I cried, clutching the dashboard as another bullet shattered the side mirror. His eyes were wild, his jaw locked tight. "I can't stop now. If they get that box, we're dead." The box sit was on the back seat, small, metallic, with strange markings along the edges. I hadn't noticed before how heavy it looked, or how cold it seemed even through the chaos. Every time I glanced at it, a strange chill ran down my spine. As if it wasn't just an object, but something alive, something waiting to change everything. The SUV rammed our bumper hard. The impact threw me forward, my seatbelt cutting into my shoulder. David swerved, barely keeping control. "Hold on," he shouted. The road curved sharply ahead. There was a bridge, narrow and half-lit by flickering lamps. Beyond it, nothing but the dark stretch of river. He drove straight onto it, the car fishtailing. The SUV followed, its lights blinding us from behind. Then suddenly, David slammed the brakes. The SUV tried to swerve, but it was too close. It hit us from the side, spinning both cars violently. My scream was lost in the sound of crunching metal and shattered glass. The world turned upside down. Then there was silence. When I opened my eyes, everything was sideways. My ears rang and smoke filled the air. "David," I whispered, reaching for him. He was slumped against the steering wheel, blood trickling down his forehead. "David, wake up." He groaned softly, his hand twitching. "Emily, the box," he rasped. "Don't. Let them take it." Before I could answer, I saw movement outside the SUV's doors opened. Two figures stepped out, moving slowly, one of them holding a gun. My pulse hammered. I reached for the box, grabbed it with trembling hands, and kicked open the broken passenger door. The cold night air hit me like ice. I crawled out, stumbling toward the edge of the bridge. The sound of footsteps grew closer. "Stop!" a voice shouted behind me. "Drop it." I turned slightly, seeing the gun aimed at me. "What's in it?" I shouted. "Why is everyone after this?" The man smirked. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me," I said through clenched teeth. He took a step closer, lowering the gun slightly. "That box contains everything your husband tried to hide, evidence, names, and a key. A digital key that could destroy half the powerful people in this city. Politicians, cops, businessmen, all of them tied to our organization. It's not just a list, it's control." I stared at him, my hands tightening around the box. "Then why kill us? Why not just take it?" "Because your husband got greedy," he said, his tone darkening. "He tried to sell it twice to us and to the government. Now both sides want him gone." My stomach twisted. "He wanted to protect us." The man laughed coldly. "He wanted to save himself. You were just the perfect cover." I shook my head, tears spilling down my face. "You're lying." He raised the gun again. "It doesn't matter. Give me the box." And then another voice, calm and low, came from behind him. "She's not giving you anything." It was him, the stranger from the warehouse, the one who had warned me. He stepped out of the shadows, gun drawn. The two men turned their weapons on him immediately, but he was faster. 2 quick shots, precise. Both men dropped before they could fire back. I stood frozen, my ears ringing again, the smell of gunpowder sharp in the air. The stranger walked toward me, eyes cold but focused. "You need to leave," he said. I stepped back. "Who are you really?" He hesitated, then sighed. "You don't need to know my name. Just know that your husband's been lying since the start. He was part of the group I used to work for. I got out. He didn't. That box isn't evidence, it's leverage. Whoever holds it controls the entire operation. That's why they want it. My mind raced. So what happens if I open it? He looked at me sharply. Don't. It's encrypted. If you try without the right code, it'll wipe everything or worse. Send it to every news agency on the planet. My breath caught. Then, what do? He glanced toward David, who was still unconscious in the car. Decide who you believe. I turned to look at my husband, his body limp, his face pale. Despite everything, my heart still ached for him. He was broken, lost, but he was still the man I loved once. I looked back at the stranger, whose eyes carried a quiet warning. Before I could decide, red and blue lights flared in the distance. Sirens wailed closer and closer. The stranger cursed under his breath. You called them. I didn't, I said quickly. Then they traced the crash. You have two options. Now hand the box to them and watch it vanish into another system of corruption, or keep it and paint a target on your back for life. The sirens were louder now. My heart pounded in my chest. I clutched the box tighter, the cold metal biting into my palms. What would you do? I asked quietly. He gave a sad smile. I'd burn it. Some truths aren't meant to be owned. And before I could say anything more, he disappeared into the dark. The police arrived seconds later. They pulled David from the car, still barely conscious, and asked me question after question. But I barely heard them. My mind was somewhere else on the box, heavy in my hands, and on the choice I now had to make at the hospital later. As David lay asleep in the bed beside me, I stared at the small box sitting in my bag. I could hear the detective's voice in my head. Sometimes revenge burns everyone it touches. And I realized it wasn't just revenge anymore. It was truth. And truth, I had learned, was far deadlier than any secret. I sat there until sunrise, torn between love and fear, between justice and survival. Finally, I whispered to the empty room. I still remember that night, because that was the night I stopped being the victim. But just as I stood to leave, my phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from unknown. You think it's over? And attached beneath it was a photo of the box open. I still remember that morning, the one when sunlight poured through the hospital window like nothing had happened. But inside me, something had shattered forever. The phone was still in my hand. That message glowing on the screen, you think it's over? And below it, that picture of the metallic box open. For a long time, I just stared at it, trying to understand what I was seeing. Inside the box wasn't money, or drugs, or gold like I'd imagined. It was something worse: photographs, stacks of documents, and a single black flash drive with my husband's name written across it. David Taylor. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt tight, my heart beat too loud. I looked over at him, still lying unconscious on the hospital bed, machines softly beeping around him. For a moment, I thought about waking him, demanding answers, screaming at him for every lie, but something inside told me not to. Not yet. I needed to see what was really on that drive, so I slipped the phone into my pocket, grabbed my bag, and walked out of the room without saying a word. The hallway felt endless, the fluorescent lights buzzing above like whispers. My mind was spinning with questions. Who sent that message? How did they get the box? And why was my husband's name written on it? I didn't go home. I couldn't. Instead, I stopped at a small cafe that had a corner table near a power outlet. My hands shook as I pulled out my laptop and plugged in the flash drive. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then the screen flickered and dozens of files appeared, each one labeled by date. I clicked the first one. It was a photo, grainy, taken in a dimly lit room. My husband was there, sitting across from the same men I'd seen at the docks. On the table between them were stacks of cash and a thick envelope. My stomach turned. I opened the next Fila video. This time, David was speaking. His voice was calm, cold, professional. These transfers will keep the accounts clean. No trace, no connection to the upper chain. The wife suspects nothing. I froze. The wife suspects nothing. That wife was me. I clicked another file, then another. It was all their bank records, transaction slips, secret payments under fake names. Every illegal shipment he had processed. Every lie he had told. Every secret he had buried under the illusion of a normal life. Tears blurred my vision. My hands shook as I scrolled through it all, each file cutting deeper. For months, maybe even years, he'd been using me as part of his cover story, a clean, loving wife, a perfect home, the image that no one would ever question. I closed the laptop, my stomach twisting. I wanted to scream, but the sound wouldn't come. My hands were ice cold, and my throat hurt from holding back tears. The people in the cafe around me talked and laughed softly, unaware that my whole world had just collapsed. And then my phone buzzed again. Another message. Same number. You were never supposed to see that. My heart stopped. I looked around the cafe quickly, scanning the faces. No one looked suspicious, but my instincts screamed that someone was watching me. I typed back before I could think. Who are you? The reply came instantly. Someone who tried to warn you, but you didn't listen. Swallowed hard. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What do you want from me? There was a pause then to help you finish what he started. Meet me tonight. The old train yard, 9 p.m., come alone. The message sent a chill through me. It could be a trap. But sitting there, surrounded by strangers, I realized something. I had nothing left to lose. My husband had lied about everything. The police couldn't protect me. And whoever was behind this knew far too much already. That night, I drove to the train yard. The place looked abandoned, swallowed by fog and silence. Rusted rails stretched into the dark, and the only sound was the wind pushing through the old metal fences. I parked near a broken signal post and waited. At exactly 9 o'clock, footsteps echoed. A shadow moved between the train cars. My pulse raced. The figure stepped into the dim light. It was the stranger. The same man who had saved me on the bridge. You came, he said quietly. I had to, I replied, keeping my distance. What's really going on? Why send me that picture? He looked tired, older somehow, like this fight had been going on far longer than I could imagine. Because you deserve to know the truth, he said. Your husband wasn't just working for the network. He was trying to take control of it. That flash drive you suits a copy. The original was encrypted and hidden. But someone else has it now. Who? I asked. He hesitated. Me, I stared at him in shock. You, he nodded slowly. He gave it to me before the crash. Said if anything happened, to make sure it got to the right hands. I took a step closer. So, you're the good guy. He gave a bitter laugh. There are no good guys in this story, Emily. Only survivors. I frowned. Then why contact me? Why show me all that? Because I need you to make a choice, he said. You can walk away, start over, pretend none of this ever happened. Or you can help me expose them. But if you do, you'll never be safe again. I looked down at the ground, at the dirt beneath my shoes, at the mist curling around the rails. My whole body felt heavy. And my husband? I asked softly. He sighed. He'll pay for what he did one way or another. A part of me wanted to say no, to run away, to let it all fade. But another part, the part that had seen too many lies. Too much pain, refused to let it end like that. I looked up, meeting his eyes. What do you need me to do? He studied me for a long moment, then handed me a small envelope. Inside are names. The people involved. Send them to this address tomorrow morning. After that, disappear. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. My hands trembled slightly. And you? He gave a faint, tired smile. Let's just say my part ends tonight. Before I could ask what he meant, a distant engine roared. Headlights flared from the other end of the yard. More cars, black, fast, moving toward us. The stranger's face hardened. Go, he shouted. Run. I froze, but he pushed me hard toward my car. Now I stumbled, clutching the envelope, and ran. Behind me, gunfire erupted, echoing through the metal and fog. I jumped into my car and started the engine, heart racing. As I sped away, I looked back once and saw the stranger standing tall, firing back until the headlights swallowed him by the time I reached the highway. The envelope sat on the seat beside me, stained slightly with his blood. My hands gripped the wheel tight. I didn't know if he was alive. But I knew one thing: the truth wasn't finished with me yet. When I finally stopped at a red light, my phone buzzed again. I looked down, expecting another message from unknown. But it wasn't that. It was from David. "We need to talk. You don't know everything." And just like that, the breath left my body. Because the one man I thought was broken, gone, and defeated was still alive. I still remember that night as clearly as if it just happened. The city lights looked dim through the rain, the kind of quiet storm that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. My phone still glowed on the passenger seat. The message from David burning in my mind: "We need to talk. You don't know everything." Those words looped over and over until my chest hurt. Part of me wanted to throw the phone out the window, drive away, vanish into some small town where no one knew my name. But another part, angry, confused, desperate for answers, knew that running wouldn't stop the truth from finding me again. So I turned the car around. The hospital was dark when I reached it, most lights off except for a few flickering signs. I walked quickly through the hallways, the sound of my shoes echoing softly. Every step made me feel smaller, like I was walking into a memory that didn't belong to me anymore. When I reached his room, the bed was empty. My heart dropped. The machines were gone, the sheets folded neatly. I stood there frozen until I heard the sound: a quiet click behind me. I turned slowly. He was standing in the doorway. David Dot. His left arm was bandaged, his face pale, but his eyes were the same cold green that had once looked at me with love. Only now they were calm. "To calm Emily," he said softly. I didn't move. "You lied to me," I said, my voice trembling. "You lied about everything." He closed the door behind him. "You were never supposed to be part of this." "Part of what?" I snapped. "The drugs, the smuggling, the money, or the part where I almost died because of your secrets." He sighed, stepping closer. "It's not what you think." I laughed bitterly. "Then explain." "Because I saw the photos. I saw the flash drive. You said the wife suspects nothing. You used me, David." He looked away, his jaw tightening. "That was for your protection. You have no idea how dangerous these people are. I had to make it look real." I took a step closer, rainwater dripping from my coat. "Then why was my name on the documents? Why was our house under a fake address? Why did you let them hurt people?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out something small, a second flash drive, silver, scratched. "Because I wasn't working for them," he said quietly. "I was working against them." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard right. "What?" He walked toward the bed, set the drive down on the table, and sat. "I was part of a covert task force. We were trying to take them down from the inside. The network runs deep, Emily. They control politicians, police, everything. I couldn't trust anyone, not even you. They were watching our house, listening to our calls. If they thought you knew, they would have killed you." My mind spun. "Then why didn't you tell me when you had the chance?" "Because the less you knew, the safer you were." He paused, rubbing his temple. "But when you found the condoms?" He gave a hollow laugh. "Those weren't mine. They were planted to make you turn against me. To make me lose focus." My throat tightened. "You're lying." He looked up, eyes wet, voice cracking. "I wish I was. But everything you saw, the texts, the men at the docks, even that box sit, was part of the operation. Until someone betrayed us." I felt dizzy, like the room was tilting. "The stranger," I whispered. "He said you gave him the original drive." David nodded slowly. "I did. He was supposed to deliver it to the authorities. But then he vanished. I thought he was dead." "He found me," I said. His head snapped up. "What?" "He saved me on the bridge. He said you'd given him something. He told me to deliver the names to an address." David's face turned pale. What address? I pulled the envelope from my bag and handed it to him. He tore it open quickly, eyes scanning the list. Then he froze. "Oh my God," he whispered. "These names, they're all agents. Innocent people. If you send this, they'll be killed." The room went silent. My stomach twisted. He lied to me. David nodded slowly. "He's not who you think he is." Before I could speak, my phone buzzed again. A new message. "It's time." Burn it all. David grabbed the phone, reading the text. "They're coming," he said, standing quickly. "We have to go." I followed him through the back hallway, the sound of thunder outside mixing with the pounding of our footsteps. We reached the exit door, but before we could step out, headlights flashed through the rain. Black cars. The same ones from the train yard. David pulled me back. Too late. Gunfire shattered the quiet. Glass exploded as bullets tore through the walls. We ducked behind a stretcher, the air thick with smoke and panic. "We can't fight them all," I shouted. He looked at me, his expression calm, resolved. "You're right." Then he handed me the silver flash drive. "Take this. Get out through the side exit. Go to the press. Tell them everything. It's the only way they'll listen." "No," I said, grabbing his arm. "You're coming with me." He smiled sadly. "I can't. If they catch me, they'll torture me for the truth. But if they think I'm dead—" He stopped, eyes softening. "Then maybe you'll finally be free." Before I could argue, he pushed me toward the door. I stumbled, tears burning my eyes. "David, please." But he was already turning back, gun in hand, disappearing into the smoke. I ran. Through the rain, through the fire alarm scream, through the chaos that swallowed the building behind me. I didn't look back. When I finally reached the street, the hospital was a blur of sirens and flames. The roof collapsed in on itself, sparks flying into the night. I stood there, soaked and shaking, holding that flash drive like it was my last piece of him. The next day, I gave the drive to the authorities. I told them everything. The truth spread fast. Names were exposed, arrests were made, and for the first time in years, the network began to fall apart. But David's body was never found. Some said he died in the fire. Others whispered he escaped, living under a new name. I don't know which one I believe. All I know is that sometimes, when the rain hits my window late at night, I still hear his voice. Calm/soft, saying, "You were never supposed to be part of this." And maybe he was right. But now I am part of it, the truth, the pain, the revenge, all of it. I didn't just survive. I changed, because sometimes you have to burn your old life down to see who you really are beneath the ashes. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means more than you can imagine, and remember, sometimes the truth hides where love once lived.